War and Peace, you know what I mean? The really long book.
How uneducated do you think I am that I
Well,
might not have heard? I mean,
there's-
I know I didn't go to Yale.
Well, there's
I've heard of War and
probably.
Peace.
Well, but do you realize it's like 700 pages? I don't know.
Yes, that's
1,000
like,
pages.
it's like
I don't
a
know what it-
stereotype.
Okay,
It's like,
all right.
next you're going to say Moby Dick was about a whale. Like, you're blowing my mind.
Exactly. Well, it was really about a man's internal struggle, but anyway.
Hey, it's Jen Fulweiler, stand-up comic and mom of 6, here with this series that we are doing by request, where we talk about what I affectionately call Joeschooling. That is the very unique philosophy that our family has about how we have educated our kids, named, of course, after my husband, Joe, here. And just to review his background so that you know, it'll help you understand his ideas if you understand him. He grew up poor, was raised by a single mother, and ended up going to Yale, where he graduated with honors, and then Columbia Law School, Stanford Business School, studied in the Master's Computer Science program while he was at Stanford. And another thing to know is our kids are currently ages 15 down to 7. They were always homeschooled. And then our 2 oldest recently started going to the local Catholic school, and they have done well in that transition. They were very much prepared for their academic career in a regular school. I say all that just so that you know that we sort of know what we're talking about here, and it's worked pretty well for our family. So, Joe, what I want to do in this video is talk about how the Joeschooling system is different than what people would get in the traditional school system.
Okay. Yeah. And when I talk about the differences, what it really reveals also is the philosophies behind it, right? So, for example, self-paced. That's one big difference between going to a regular school and going to homeschool the way that we do it. And so obviously, philosophically, we think that's a good thing to have things be self-paced. And why is that? Well, because if you're behind the rest of the class, it leads to a lot of frustration. It leads to a lot of demoralization for the student. And if you're ahead of the class, it leads to a lot of boredom and frustration. So self-paced, we think, is a very good thing. And that's one of the things that is different about the way we do it. Each kid just stays on, they just work their little path as quickly as they can. And sometimes they're zooming ahead, and sometimes they're trudging through.
And let me jump in to say, by the way, we have another video that you can look up here on the channel where we go into the details of what that system looks like. So that's in another video, and this one is just kind of laying out what the overall differences are.
Right. Okay, so another big difference is, and this is my list here, is what I keep looking at. There's another big difference is there's no homework. The kids have their assignments that they have to do throughout the day, and if they don't get them done, then they start on them again the next day. But there's no, stressing out from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. When the day ends at, 5 p.m. or whatever, they're done. So that's really nice. They do one subject at a time, which I find to be really helpful. In school, I always found it jarring.
Yeah, go into detail on that.
Yeah, I always found it jarring when I would, you go from English class for an hour to, math class for an hour, history class for an hour. And, every day you're going through like 6 or 7 or 8 different classes. And to me, it just seemed kind of like reading War and Peace, one page at a time, one page per day, for 700 years. War and Peace, you know what I mean? The really long book.
How uneducated do you think I am that I might not have heard? I mean, I know I didn't go to Yale.
Well, there's
I've heard of War and Peace.
Well, but do you realize it's like 700 pages? I don't know.
Yes,
1,000 pages.
It's like a stereotype.
Okay,
it's like,
right.
Next you're going to say Moby Dick was about a whale. Like, you're blowing my mind.
Exactly. Well, it was really about a man's internal struggle. But anyway, I'm just kidding. I don't even know if that's true. I just made that up.
It is.
Okay.
Captain Ahab.
Yes. Anyway, one subject at a time I think is really helpful because kids can really get deep in that subject. They can orient themselves, and they, the concepts build on each other in geometry or in biology or whatever. So it's just so nice to be able to just sit down and just learn it. I feel like they learn it better. They certainly learn it more quickly, I think.
And I know people have a lot of questions. Now, do we have them focus primarily on one subject at every age? I mean, early on in elementary school, they're switching back, like in first grade, second grade, they don't do that quite as much, right?
Well, they still kind of do, because the books that we use, which we talked about earlier, are broken up by subject. So yeah, they typically go through the entire math section, and then the entire, history or social studies or whatever, geography, section, and then
Okay.
yeah, so they typically do.
Okay,
and there aren't as many, by the way.
And I'll link that video in the notes, because it will help you understand everything we're saying to watch that other video. That will be linked in the notes, so I'll make sure that that's there.
Right. And there are typically fewer subjects when you're in the earlier grades. So.
And another question would be, so I know, but this is so different than the traditional school system. I know we have people watching who are like, surely you're not saying what I think you're saying, that like a kid would spend pretty much all day of their academic day just on chemistry. But yes, that is what you're saying.
That is exactly what I'm saying. So, for example, our oldest daughter did chemistry last year, and she was watching the Great Courses series. It started out, she was watching...
How old was she? You don't know.
She's 13.
Yeah, she was 13 at the time.
So it changes all the time.
Well, we have 6 kids.
Yeah, but so she started out with a goal of 4 lectures a day, but then I could just tell like she could do more than that, so I upped it to 5. But then they started getting really hard and blah blah blah. Anyway, but there's always a daily goal, and yes, they do. So her goal was just to watch lectures until she finished that lecture series, and then she had a goal. She actually took the AP test prep for chemistry, and then she had to do 50 pages per day, which, you get through a book pretty quickly that way. Especially
when you have a whole day. That sounds like a lot, but if that is all you are doing academically in one day, you can get through it.
Oh yeah, I mean, our kids, like for example, when she was doing 5 lectures a day, I think they're like 30 or 45 minute lecture. Even let's say they're 45-minute lectures, and let's say she did 4 of them. What is that?
I would have said 30 minutes.
That's 3 hours a day. Now she's taking breaks in between, and she's taking notes, and hopefully she's pausing and thinking, do I really understand what was said? And maybe watching a YouTube video here or there to clarify something. So hopefully she's not literally just sitting there for 3 hours and then done, but maybe she is. It's an incredibly efficient way to learn. That's the point.
Yeah, and again, I know that it's blowing people's minds, and this is such a different way to approach education. But what I've seen since we switched to this model, another thing in the previous videos we talked about, I used to do very traditional homeschool, where it's like I am the teacher and I stand in front of the class and for 7 hours and we do all these different subjects. And it's like I could see my kids' brains relaxing when we started doing this subject-driven Joeschooling method, where, if you're trying to understand AP chemistry, especially if it's at a young age, you're a little bit younger than you would normally internalize the subject, it's hard to do that and learn geography and learn world history and learn about the hieroglyphs or whatever. It really helps anyone's brain, especially a child's brain, to be able to just, your whole world right now is just chemistry. It's not geography, geometry, it's just chemistry. And the rate at which they are able to learn these subjects is unbelievable when we do it this subject-driven way.
Okay. So, another big difference is in this system, if you fail the test, it doesn't really matter. You just take it again. You restudy for it and you retake it, because let's say take chemistry. I've got a bunch of tests for chemistry. I pretty much use STAR, State of Texas Aptitude Assessment Readiness something tests, because they're free and they're available online. And unlike the New York Regents tests, they're not too ridiculously hard, or AP exams are ridiculously hard. So STAR chemistry, STAR biology, STAR, all those subjects, they're pretty, they're just reasonably solid high school level tests. So if you fail the first one, that's fine. Go back and study again, and take the next one. It really decreases their stress level. And it stays focused on the goal, right? Because the goal is just for them to get an education. The goal is for them to learn this stuff. I don't really care how they learn it. If they want to take and fail 5 tests before they finally decide to really study for the test, then fine, and then they'll finally study and they'll finally learn it and they'll finally pass. And what they learn pretty quickly is it's actually easier to just study for it the first time. And they learn how to study. They learn to, take notes and create a little cheat sheet of things to memorize before you go into the test. So that's another big difference.
Well, and one of the upshots of that is that it demolishes the traditional grade system, not
Right.
grades of ABC, but what grade are you in? And that people always laugh when they say, "Oh, Jen, you have 6 kids. What grades are they in?" I don't even know where our kids. Our 2 oldest go to high school now, but the other 4, I don't know how to answer that question because one of them might be way ahead in one subject, so they're a 2nd grader doing 6th grade reading, but they're a little behind in math, need some time to catch up, so they're still on 1st grade math. So the Joeschooling system blows away the entire grade level paradigm.
It also does blow away the ABCDF grade thing because their grade is always, A or B. I mean, depending on what they pass, because they're just going to stay on that subject until they get 80% or better. And by the way, I used to say 90% or better, and I just found when a kid gets an 88 or an 85 on the test and everyone is ready to move on, it made my life miserable, and I know it was making their lives miserable, and I just felt like if they can get 80% of it right, they're probably good enough. And well, there's another thing, which is I just decide, I can just sort of tell if they just got lucky and got 80% right, or if they really know this stuff, but I don't know, they missed a few questions. So it's not hard. There's no hard and fast rule on that.
What I like about this also, by the way, is not doing the traditional grading, like you get an end of 6 weeks grade kind of thing, is that some people might hear that we don't do traditional grades and think that it's coming from a place of we're all winners. We don't want grades to impact their self-esteem. And it's not that. They are measured on how well they know the subject, and they can't move on until they know the subject. So there is a grade at the end of it, but it is nice that it's not these arbitrary 6 weeks your grades are coming in, which can, I think, unnecessarily give kids a self-perception about whether they're good or bad at a subject. Because you might have a kid who's actually quite good at chemistry, but they learn more slowly. So they're getting bad grades. Therefore, they start to think, I'm bad at chemistry, when they're really not. It's just, they just need a different pace. So,
yeah, I also think life is not, school, I always found, was so much harder than real life, because in real life, if you turn in a project at work and it's not quite right, your boss will give it back to you and you can redo it. Now, if you do that all the time, you might end up getting fired. But it's not like in school where it's you got something wrong, or you missed it by a day, and you just get an F and the world ends. There's a real gotcha quality to school that I don't typically feel in real life. I mean, there's some things in life that are gotcha, right? Don't drink and drive. That can be a big deal if you break that rule. But generally, most things in life are not gotcha. So, yeah. Another thing that's different is they can see the test. Now, they can't see the actual test that I'm going to give them, because I don't even know which. Again, I've got 10 chemistry tests. I don't know which one I'm going to give them, but they can take a 2 or 3, however many they want, and use them to study, and that makes a huge difference.
And slow down on that, because this is important, and it's.
Yeah.
I have gotten confused when you've talked about this in the past, so slow down on
so
this.
Let me explain what I mean. I have taken so many tests and so many just subject matter tests, but then also AP exams, and then also SAT, ACT, GMAT, LSAT, you name it. What's the grad school and GRE? I've just taken so many tests I can't even imagine it. I can't even tell you.
Oh, wait, he's taken the bars for Texas, New York, and New Jersey. And you didn't even have to take the New Jersey bar exam. You just did.
Yeah, that's true. I never practiced in New Jersey.
And these are hard.
Well, I also took the CPA exam. That's the hardest.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the hardest exam I've probably ever taken. Anyway, so I'm very good at test prep. And what I have learned is that there is nothing better than just going and getting the test. Now, obviously, everyone says, well, yeah, but you can't get the test, right? Because that's cheating. Well, yeah, but I'm not. What I'm saying is, if you go look at 3 GRE tests, the 4th one that you're actually going to get, which obviously you can't see until you actually take it, it's going to be really, really similar to these other 3. If you can ace these 3, then you can ace the 4th one. Well, how do I know if I could ace these 3? Just read them and just look at and if you don't understand something, go figure it out. And then, memorize the stuff that you need to memorize, to answer these questions correctly. So that is the best way to learn, in my opinion, to study for a test is just to go look at old tests. So, which by the way, is why, the SAT, all these places, they don't release the entire old test. They did. There was a time when they did, but it's too easy, right? It makes the test too easy. And I don't know of any high school teachers that give out all their old tests, right? You know why? Because they reuse them, right? It's the same test. And so anyway, that's why I think these STAR tests and things like that are so valuable. So that's another difference, is that I'll just give them as many of the practice tests to study from as they want. And that's makes it extremely efficient. Okay, so another difference is there's no busy work in the way that we do homeschooling. And
define busy work.
So busy work is you're a teacher, you've got, an hour to fill, and for whatever reason, there's just nothing you really need to do. Maybe the test is coming up in a couple of days, but you've really already gone over the material. I mean, how many times can you go over the same material? Or whatnot.
I did this when I was poorly running homeschool. It was science time, and science time didn't end until 2:00, and so it was I will do some random science stuff. It was not. It was busy work. Yeah, they would just end up doing busy work.
And so that's gone in this system, because if the kid is done and ready to test out, they take the test, and if they're not, then they have stuff to do. There's no filling time. And finally, they can use any materials they want. They do have to, at least especially in the younger grades, they do have to work through the workbooks and so forth, worksheets and so forth that I give them, but that doesn't usually take that many hours per day. But if there's anything that they're not really understanding, they're always welcome to go watch a Vsauce video or a Khan Academy video or there's so many free things out there. I actually just found something recently. I think it's called openculture.com or .org. It's a portal that links to all the free educational material that they can find, and they've found it all, from what I can tell. And there's so many things like that.
And I remember when I was homeschooling, you just trying to put the traditional school model on homeschool. I just sort of didn't know what to do with the wealth of resources at Khan Academy, at Open Culture, at all of these different places, because it was I have this stack of books this high for our science curriculum, and there's no place for a great courses video or a masterclass video in this rigid curriculum I'm using. So it was a weird feeling of that's so cool that all this stuff is out there, but I'm following this plan, and this plan doesn't have room for that. So I don't know what I do with it. And there was always this tension there. And then when we switched to the Joeschooling system, where it's, all right, we have, let's say with our oldest daughter, we have the AP chemistry exam. She needs to be knowledgeable enough about this subject to do well on this exam. And we're not following any particular curriculum. It's just whatever works to get her there. And each kid has a different style of learning. Well, then suddenly I felt now I see how I can tap into that. There's this great masterclass that she could start with, or she could do a great courses video, or maybe she's more of a reader. She could read a book. But that gave me a lot of peace when I finally saw a system where we could actually take advantage of the unbelievable wealth of information that's out there.
Yes. And that's, by the way, that's routine for our children. If there's something that one of my kids comes to me and says, when they're, I don't know, I forget what grade, let's say it's 5th grade, when they encounter the Pythagorean theorem for the first time, or maybe it's 8th grade, I don't know. But they say, I don't really understand this. Why does this work? I say, just go to YouTube and just search explanation of Pythagorean theorem and watch some videos, some highly rated videos on it. And so they do that routinely now when they run into something that they just don't understand, like ribosomes. Somebody was asking about the other day.
That was me.
It's a biology concept. Like, just go. I mean, everything you could ever imagine. It's just like it's right there, and just find the best 3-minute video explaining ribosomes. Now you understand it, and so they're just really used to that now.
Just as a quick aside for the moms. I really, really, really see a culture, especially if you're in homeschooling Facebook groups, forums, clubs, things like that with other moms. There is a one-upsmanship culture where the amount of hours out of your life that you pour into homeschooling is associated with love for your children. And if I were to go into some homeschooling groups and say, yeah, my kids were asking about ribosomes, and I was like, look it up on YouTube, the reaction would be like, oh, I didn't realize you don't love your children. That's good to have that information. That we've got to break that mental idea that the amount of time that you spend on this is correlated to how seriously you take this and how much you love your kids. Sometimes the right answer is to let them find the information for themselves and use all the resources that are out there. So that's just a little psychological thing for moms to watch out for.
Yeah, it's so much better to teach someone to fish than to hand them a fish, right? I mean, it's so much better to teach someone to learn than to just kind of, be a crutch for them one time. My kids now have gotten to the point where they realize I can't explain every concept super well. So they just prefer to go find a 3-minute video on YouTube about ribosomes because it's going to be a better explanation, right? The best explanation in the world is better than mine. So why not go get the best one? And then they don't have to wait for me, they're knocking on my door, hey, I can chat about this. They just go, boop, boop, boop. Now they understand ribosomes. It's great, and so it's efficient.
And again, something that it's new in history, new as in just in the past 5 or 10 years, is because there's so much out there. What I find is our kids connect with different experts. So one might find a chemistry guy on YouTube that just the way he explains things just resonates with that kid, whereas another kid might have some, different professor, and the way she explains things is exactly what he needs to hear. And so that's the other great thing about this system where they figure it out for themselves is different people connect with different experts. And as I said before, they connect with different formats. Some people prefer a book, some people prefer a video. This system lets them find the way of communication that's going to best allow them to absorb it.
One thing we haven't addressed, and I think we should address it now, is, okay, so if this is all so great, why are your kids going to the local Catholic school? And the answer is socializing. They got to an age where they just wanted to get out and meet kids their own age. And kids always want to do that. And our kids have always done some of that because they've always, been in sports and religious ed and, various other activities. I mean, our kids have done so many activities, I can't even name them all, but they get out, right? And they have neighbor kids and blah, blah, blah. So they've always socialized. But they get to a point where they're starting to desire their independence a little bit more, and they want to, it's beyond just like casual socializing. They want to form friendships, and let's face it, they're probably thinking like, I'd like to go on a date, and that's all healthy and good. So that's really what brought this system to an end.
Right.
But our kids had already progressed through, the first year and a half, 2 years of high school subjects before they started 9th grade. So it still helped them a lot.
Yeah. Well, and I will say that doing this model of education has given them skills that I see benefiting them at the Catholic school.
Very much.
And will benefit them in college. Again, it's the teach a man to fish versus fishing for him and handing him a fish that even when your kids, and they may decide, like ours did, that it's time to go to school, you might decide that. That's fine. Like we said in the other video, don't make your education system your religion. It changes. It might change, and that's great. It's wonderful to have those options. But if you ever spend any time in this Joeschooling system, you will find that it gives them life skills that will serve them very well as life goes on.
Yeah, and not just they've learned how to go look up stuff on YouTube by themselves. That's huge. They've learned to learn. That's very, very important. But they also have a sense now of how long it should take to learn a subject. And they can sort of tell when they're just being assigned busy work. And, some of that's going to happen in any kind of schooling system where the teacher has to lead 30 kids through the subject matter in lockstep. But I think, so far we haven't had any outright rebellions against busy work. But I think it's good in a way that they're a little frustrated when their time is being wasted on stuff that, when it's not efficient, But we tell them, look, that's the way it is in school. I mean, there's one teacher, there are 30 students. The teacher has to kind of lead you all in lockstep. Sometimes you're going to be a little ahead. Sometimes you're going to be a little behind. That's just the way school is. But I do think when they get out and they're working in jobs and they have to go learn something for their job, like if they, for example, put something on their resume that they don't really know, like HTML or what was the thing that you?
I would.
Then they'll be able to learn it in 1 week, like their mother did. Very well, actually. Fooled us all. Fooled everyone.
This is a reference to my resume when I first was out of college was a little bit of a creative writing exercise. Well, I didn't know.
You knew HTML, but there was one thing you didn't really know.
Database programming. But I felt
but you learned it. You learned it in 2 weeks, and now you're like a pro at it.
Well, I said I was proficient with it. I didn't think they'd really call me on it. And one day my boss called me into the office and was like, well, we have a database programmer here. This is the new team that you're leading. And that was a big day for me. I had to learn database programming very quickly, but it can be done.
It can be done. So there you go.
So that was the list of the ways that the Joeschooling system is different than traditional school. Again, I like to say in every video, we're not telling everyone to educate their kids exactly like we do. We're just laying out the system that has worked for us, because what we would love to see is for every family to have options. That is something that Joe really felt, being raised by a single mother, that the way that homeschooling is traditionally presented, and frankly, a lot of things within the school system, it doesn't work for single parents. It doesn't work for households where both parents have to work. And so what we're all about is just helping people have the resources so that they can craft a life, and their kids' education being part of that life, that works for them. So leave a comment.
The way you phrased that, it made it sound like it doesn't work. It can work for single parents. That's what she's trying to say. It can work for single parents. I don't think it was clear. And so anyone can do it.
Yes, anyone can. Well, and in fact, that was the genesis of the whole thing, that when Joe was watching the way that I was homeschooling, that was taking all this time per day, he said that, well, how would my mom have been able to do that if she had wanted this option? And that was actually what started this whole thing, was saying, let's find a system that even a single mother could use. So yeah, it can work for anyone. Leave a comment if you have any questions. Hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss future videos. And then of course, follow me on my favorite place to hang out, which is Instagram. My handle is Jennifer Fulweiler over there. And I will be back with you soon.